Michelle. Okay? Okay. Next, before we do anything with that. Well, welcome everyone. And first of all, I'd like to know how many newly appointed continuity coordinators are here. Wow, that's awesome. You're welcome, and I really look forward to working with you this year. Also, if I'm not talking loud enough, raise your hand. I don't have a naturally loud voice, so I'll have to project it. So what I'm going to be talking today is I'm going to provide information on continuity of operations for the Texas state agency. And I'll be addressing why do we do COOP and why it's important, and certain elements of COOP, essential functions, business impact analysis, and risk management. So, what is continuity of operations? It's an effort within individual agencies to ensure that primary mission essential functions and mission essential functions continue through any type of emergency, whether it be, natural disaster or terrorist act, an emergency. Anything you can think of, all hazards, you can still continue to do these essential functions. It's because the objective of COOP is to protect life, property, and essential information while continuing essential services for your customers until normal operations can resume. Now, there is some confusion about BCP, Business Continuity Operations, and COOP, Continuity of Operations Planning. And that's because the legislature has been using BCP, and most state agencies, I've noticed a lot of them use BCP, but it's virtually the same thing. However, we're using FEMA standards, and within FEMA, COOP is for government agencies, and BCP is for private businesses. So, with the changing threat environment, it's very important to have COOP plans. Homeland Security identified that the lack of COOP plans in Texas was a vulnerability. And it's very important for state agencies to provide critical government functions under all conditions. Another reason it's important to do COOP planning is because it's a law. Texas Labor Code 412.054 says that each state agency works with State Office of Risk Management to develop COOP plans. And that's why the policy letter was signed October 24th, 2013, and this applies to all state agencies. And it was developed to give guidance to agencies because a lot of agencies had plans. They had to check the box when that law came out, and they had just put it on a shelf. So they didn't have viable, actionable COOP plans. So the policy letter re-energized COOP planning in the state of Texas. And obviously it worked. We have a lot of COOP planners in this room, which is great. They also developed Texas Essential Functions when they published this policy letter. As I said, having a plan sitting on your shelf isn't going to help anything. You need a continuity program. To have, and a continuity program rests on 4 pillars. The first being leadership. In advance, you need orders of succession and delegations of authority. You also need leadership buy-in. When you're developing the COOP plan, if you don't have leadership buy-in, it's really hard to get cooperation with the rest of the staff. The next is staff, because your emergency relocation group, or your ERG, is made up of your staff, and they should be trained and cross-trained. And FEMA suggests vertical and horizontal. One level above and one level below. And the next is facilities. Of course, you should identify your alternate facility in your plan, and you need a signed memorandum of agreement, and you file it with Texas Facilities Commission. And I'm really happy that I had a meeting with the Texas Facilities Commission, and they are very excited about their role in COOP, and they're just starting to develop a portal, so you can file your MOAs in the portal, and also, if you need an alternate facility, you just put in your parameters, like how many square foot you need, and how many people on your ERG team, and how many outlets you need. You put that input in, and they will find you an alternate facility within the state. And it's going to be pretty restricted. Only continuity coordinators will be getting access to this. And last is communication. Of course, you need robust, interoperable communication. And you have a continuity program management cycle. It starts with plans and procedures. The next step is test, training, and exercise to make sure that your plans and procedures work. And then evaluations, after action reports, and lessons learned. And from that, you develop your corrective action plan, and then update your plan. And it's a continuous cycle. You do this every year. And the 4 phases of COOP, of course, are readiness and preparedness. We wish that we could stay in that phase 1 all the time, but if you're activated, you go, if there's an event or a threat, you go to phase 2, which is activation. Phase 3, continuity of operations, which lasts up to 30 days. And phase 4 is reconstitution. Now, COOP plans are driven by essential functions. And essential functions are those functions that enable an organization to provide vital services, exercise civil authority, maintain the safety of the general public, and sustain the industrial and economic base during an emergency. Now, there are 4 types of essential functions. Texas Essential Functions, and these are the acronyms you'll be seeing. Texas Essential Functions, Primary Essential Functions, Mission Essential Functions, and ESA means Essential Supporting Activities. And then the low priority functions are not what you include in your COOP plan. So, how to determine the essential functions? The Texas Essential Functions are an overreaching responsibility of state government to lead and sustain the state. And there are 8 of them, and I'm going to read what the 8 are. They're actually a mirror of the national essential functions. The first is maintain continuity of government. The second is provide visible leadership. The third, defend the Constitution of Texas. 4, maintain effective relationships with neighbors and partners. 5, maintain law and order. 6, ensure availability of emergency services. 7, maintain economic stability. And 8, ensure the availability of basic essential services. Now, the primary mission essential functions are the functions that support either the Texas essential functions or national essential functions, and they need to be either continuous or resumed within 12 hours. And of course, the mission essential functions I mentioned, they provide vital services, exercise civil authority, maintain the safety of the public, and sustain industrial and economic base. The ESAs are critical functions that an organization must continue, and that's pretty much up to each individual agency. But something like, excuse me, something like payroll would be an ESA, or maybe security. So you would include that as an essential function. This is really important. When identifying mission essential functions, if you have an event, your resources will probably be scarce. So it's really important not to identify too many essential functions. Of course, if they really are, you want to put them in your plan. But some people get really sensitive and think if you don't identify their function, that they're not essential. It doesn't mean they're not important. It just means that these are the functions that have to continue to provide these services to the public and for safety. You know, I was actually, when I was writing a plan, I was helping someone identify their essential functions, and they were trying to put things in because they said they were so busy that they couldn't go a month without doing these functions. It would just build up too much. And that's not really, that doesn't rise to the threshold of essential functions. So I know a lot of people here are new to continuity, and so I was getting, you know, emails, where do I start? And I developed a milestone list, and this is to assist agencies with their planning. It's not mandatory, and it's not locked. It's going to be on the website hopefully tomorrow, right, John? Tomorrow. And so you can download this milestone list on your own computer, but the milestone list on the internet is also connected to like worksheets, data sheets, and some websites according to, you know, it's like a step-by-step. And so you can also download those tools for your use when you're creating a plan. Oh, I also wanted to mention that SORM will be hosting a one-day workshop on March 19th. It was going to be at the Clements building, but I think we have a better room at the Travis building, right, Sean?
That's the plan, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we will send an email out before then. But it's for planners that you want to bring your plan and you want to discuss the problems you're having. We're also going to have experts in the field explain different elements of COOP planning, and you can ask them questions also. So whoever can make it, you know, we'll be sending an email out shortly. But put the 19th on your calendar. So business impact analysis is a method of identifying and evaluating the effects of various threats and hazards that may have on the ability of an organization to perform its mission essential functions. And it's through the business impact analysis that the organizations will identify problem areas or weaknesses. And in turn, leadership will see it, the results, and that business impact analysis will help with risk management decisions. Now, continuity planning should be based on the assumption that organizations won't receive warning of an impending emergency. That's why you have to be ready for all hazards. And a risk assessment is essential to planning. And because this is a property workshop, I wanted to really bring up the importance of risk assessment, of loss exposure, and property insurance strategy. So I think you had a lot of great information today that will help you in this area of your planning. But it is really important to assess what type of insurance you have, because if you lose your property, what are you going to do to mitigate that? And when you reconstitute, whatever your ultimate site is, I don't think they want you moving in. You know, I think you need to find some place permanent.
Maureen, can I add to that? During the break, one of the participants here asked me about their automobiles and their vehicles and things that they use, because that particular agency required those as a major part of their organisation and to deliver the services that agency has. So this is a property program, but you also have other assets that you own that you also need to be aware of. And they were asking, is it possible to get the geographical or the physical address of where those vehicles are parked to plug
Maureen, I had a question too, because just going back to what you mentioned earlier, because of the fact that so many agencies rely on TFC and we need MOUs with them to provide us with an alternate facility, it kind of just keeps circling back to that whole issue of the onus on TFC to have viable buildings that, and I guess the concern is, if we don't have a lot of insured, well, maybe you're not, but at any rate, some of those buildings, if they're not insured, or, how do we address that? And TFC's not here. I mean, I guess where is that all pulled together for the accountability of TFC?
We're hoping with this push right now, to exercise, will make agencies aware and do something about that. And also, I want to mention about TFC. It's really important to go through TFC because say you make a deal with a friend, an agency you know, and they have a room this big, and your ERG, Emergency Relocation Group, is only like 4 people. Well, you're wasting all this space. Right. So they're going to put you into a space that will fit your
right, and I understand that, right? And the concern is, are there risks in that building because it's uninsured? And while we're inhabiting that building for 14 days or 30 days, what are the risks inherent in an uninsured building owned by TFC? That's right.
I could elaborate on some of the discussions that we've had with TFC. The 2 components, one is the insurance component. Right now, the only TFC buildings that are insured are the ones that are bonded through TPFA. They are aware that when they come off bond, that TFC then owns them and they become uninsured unless TFC chooses to purchase insurance. So they are aware of that. We are working with them on that because, of course, it's not appropriated in their budget, so they're going to have to deal with the legislature on those issues. Also, part of the challenge is sometimes bonds aren't on an exact schedule when they come off because they may be rebonded, and so we're still trying to figure out the timelines too.
It's on the radar, I mean,
yes, they're aware of it. We've been discussing with them. Now, in terms of continuity, I guess you could go to an alternate location that's not insured, but I guess that wouldn't really matter whether it's insured or not because at that point it's out of your control. But the way that we've been discussing with TFC is they have an inventory of all state buildings that they control, whether they're leased or owned by TFC. So this is kind of a central warehouse for all state-owned buildings. Now, what they don't have at this time is specific spaces within those buildings that are laid out for ERGs to relocate. So some of these spaces may be conference rooms. Some of these spaces may be some kind of common area within a building. So what they're going to try to do over time is to go building by building by building and kind of allocate these spare areas. So SORM's conference room may hold 10 people. So that would go up onto their portal that they're going to create. And then if an agency needs enough space for 10 people and 10 computers and however many outlets, then they will take that agency and match it up with SORM's conference room. So in the event that that agency needs to relocate their group, it'll go into SORM's conference room. And then we will develop a memorandum of agreement.
Thank you.
I have a really quick question about that. If my agency has already got a memorandum of understanding or agreement, whatever, with another agency and we're sort of reciprocating, they can move into our building or we can move into theirs, whatever, do we still have to go through TFC?
You will have to. I'm sure that there will be opportunities to continue on with those previous agreements. The only challenge is, let's say you only need 5 spaces, but the agency you have a reciprocal agreement with has enough room for 30 spaces. And that's putting a larger agency that needs 30 spaces at a disadvantage because now there's no room for them to locate. So it's going to be a little bit of puzzling and matching, but if they can accommodate it, I don't want to speak on their behalf, I'm sure they would. But if one small agency is trying to locate into a big agency that would offset another big agency that needs access to that space.
We're both the same size agencies.
Okay, and I don't want to speak for TFC, but I'm sure that they'd honor an agreement as long as it fits with their strategy.
May I ask, how far away is it from your site?
Our building is down at the Hobby Building, and our reciprocal place is over at the Metro Center by the airport. So it's just
Okay, so you're also in our division with Metro Center?
We're with the
Oh, okay, well, it's very small. TEI has an agreement with them as well.
That's why I was trying to figure out if
And
you
also-
still need to go with TFC or.
And also another thing to consider is we may not be aware, there may be 3 agencies that think they're going to be entitled to the same spot, So this is going to give us another opportunity to look and see exactly where everybody's going, because the day that the interruption happens, we don't want 4 different agencies showing up to one doorstep, and then which one gets access.
And
So,
follow the MOA to get the access.
Right.
yes.
And that's already, we've had that statement for a couple of years.
Okay.
Well, and the one thing that I found confusing just recently getting into this is there's 2 very different thought processes. One, the COOP, based on everything I've learned so far, these MOAs and the relocation plans, this is just for your emergency response group.
Yeah.
This is not your agency.
Right.
And I've noticed there are a lot of folks that are like, well, if your whole agency goes under and your building's unavailable for an extent, TFC is definitely going to be involved in finding space or rebuilding the building or doing whatever that is too.
Right, because they can find conference rooms.
Right.
You know, it's not going to be the whole building. No.
I think there was another question somewhere here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get a hold of TFC for like 3 years now to get an MOU with them as a backup, because I already have a MOU with another agency. So how did you go about doing this? And please tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I have been calling and
They are going to
calling.
be at our workshop on the 19th and explaining what they're.
Okay, because I have been emailing and calling, and I've done everything but basically go down and sit at a door camping out, because my ED has tasked me with actually getting something in writing from them, just so I have something in backup that he wants in our business continuity plan. And I've done everything. I mean, I've even sent them copies on my emails. Like I said, I've done basically everything but go sit in their doorstep.
Yeah, we've gotten told, well, we'll figure it out when it happens. Like, thanks, that really helps me with.
Yeah, and that's what they told me too. We'll find you a place. But now y'all are telling me that
Well,
we're supposed to have something in writing from
This
them.
is part of the reason of the statewide strategy. Homeland Security identified this deficiency, SORM identified this deficiency, and you all have identified this deficiency.
Yes.
So this is part of the transition of, okay, we had aspirations, but once we start putting it to work, we can't get what we need in terms of alternate locations or access to equipment. So this is the beginnings of getting there. TFC, we've been having a few discussions with them. They're receptive. They're trying to get their ducks in a line. SORM and Homeland Security and DIR and other agencies are putting guidance out there for other state agencies that may not have the expertise.
Well, I have a question. Why can't we, get into an MOU with like City of Austin or somebody else, because I know City of Austin have some buildings out at the airport and stuff like
And
that.
there's nothing prohibiting you from doing that.
Okay.
Whether City of Austin wants to accommodate or not, yeah, you'll have to have an MOA.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
of course.
alternate stuff, because we have our own building and own land. So if something happened to our building and land, we'd be looking back downtown. But that's the problem that I've run into, is we actually own our building and land. TFC doesn't help us with anything.
That's exactly right.
Yes, that's my other problem I've run
They don't
into.
extend any of their
Yes.
services.
If you're not in one of their buildings.
Yes, and that's the problem I've
Okay.
run into.
We can't even get a contract.
That's the problem that you kind of look into and say, well, that's not so well.
I have my people. I mean, that can get them to do services, but
Okay,
that's the
well-
problem I've run into, is that
They just don't want to
our
play with
building
us.
and land.
Okay, well, we can have conversations with TFC for those of you that aren't in TFC owned buildings, and see what their thoughts are on that.
Maybe you and I can hear them
There we go.
together with our agency.
Yeah, that's.
And that's a possibility too. And some agencies, probably not yours, but some are big enough that they have buildings throughout the state, and they can probably just relocate within themselves. But for those of you that are in one-off or two-off buildings that are not owned or controlled by TFC, this will be part of the discussion that we can have, and hopefully connect you all together.
Or you can throw that out there when y'all talk to them.
Yeah, we'll bring that up in our next discussion.
Since we've tried.
I think we have a meeting on Friday with them. Some in the near future.
Thank you.
Maureen, can you extend the acronyms that you're using?
Yes.
Thank you.
You mean-
MOA.
Oh, MOA.
Agreement?
Agreement. MOU or MOA, or memorandum of agreement or understanding. And we have a template for facility, an MOA, memorandum of agreement for facilities, and it's on our website, on the small website. So you can use that.
Is it forms or something?
Go to the continuity portion,
Uh-huh.
isn't it there?
Yeah, it's about halfway down the page.
Halfway down the page.
We have headings on each section and then
Okay.
subheadings.
So you can use that for your own agency. And if you have reciprocal agreements, you can use it, it's also written that way, you can use it that way. So, we were talking about property insurance in the forms that Michelle Toohey and Chris talked about. Texas Labor Code 412053 says that each fiscal year, each state agency shall report to the director, State Office of Risk Management, detailed information on existing and potential exposure to loss, including property location and values, descriptions of agency operations, and estimates of maximum and probable and maximum possible losses by category of risk. And so if you fill out this insurable asset study, you will be compliant with that law. So there's a lot of reasons to fill out this insurable asset study. It will help you with your COOP plan. You'll get that CatNet report for your risk assessment. And you can find this report, well, it's on your bond site.
Yeah, the spreadsheet that she's talking about, there's two ways that you can get it. One is you may have already received it when the risk manager came out to do an on-site consultation or a risk management program review, depending on your agency. And it's an Excel spreadsheet for property, and they also have an automobile one to collect your assets. The other one is on our website. It's the property schedule that you can fill out. If you get a quote for the automobile, if you get a quote for the property program today, you will have completed that part of that statute.
And I also have it on the milestone list under the risk management section. So there's a link to that. So for budgeting and planning process, agencies, leaders, and staff ensure availability of critical continuity resources for continuity planning before, during, and after an event. And of course, the reconstitution is probably the biggest expense. And insurance, and so, insurance is a very important part of that, because you have to, in your risk, identify single point of failure. When you're doing your plan, for example, you might have a server, and the backup server is right beside it. If something happens to your building, you lose everything, all your information. That's a single point of failure. You need to document that and bring it to the leadership. And of course, that's the biggest expense, so they have to budget for that. Anything that you notice. I know I was doing a plan and they used equipment that was extremely expensive. So they didn't have money to buy another one. So you have to consider that in your insurance plan. And also put in your Go Kit purchase order with all the information on how to buy it too. That should also be included in your plan. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
If our stuff is going from a server to the cloud, then all we got to worry about is the cost of replacing the server itself, not the information, right?
Exactly.
So,
And that's a good backup.
so those of you who don't have clouds, you have to consider that.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I think we've talked about this before in some of our COOP roundtable meetings, but the idea that for those agencies, as ours are TDI, whose all of our data is housed at a data center, either San Angelo or Austin or both, it's important to find out where you are in the queue of things, because if anything were to happen citywide where the data centers are impacted, you're not necessarily going to come up right away. I think we're like number 13, and obviously priority is given to life and death, those agencies, health and human services, hospitals, those kind of things. So it would behoove you to find out where you land, if they can tell you in the queue of being brought back up if there's a citywide or some kind of impact to DIR in the data centers.
And probably if you are an essential function, you'll be up on that list. Mm-hmm. I would hope.
Yeah, you would hope, yeah. I mean, I gotta say, it helps us, and it helps me kind of let our divisions know who think that they should be high up. Yeah, well, no, not us. Insurance is important, but no.
And of course, some people will telework, and it doesn't matter if they're essential function or not. They can work at their homes, and they might not be able to access.
Right, and we're trying to, we're creating policy and doing a lot, that whole issue is evolving, to get more on board with telecommuting so that can be part of it.
That's great, and that's great for the pandemic. We're so trying to. Okay, and here's my contact. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have just one question on the Texas Facilities Commission portal. We've only got 8 months, and doing an MOA or an MOU can be time consuming. You know when they'll put their portal up?
I don't know. I'm hoping to find out by March 19th what they're, what they just had a meeting with them recently, and that's what they came up with, and I heard they just had a meeting within their organization, so we'll find out.
They need more money.
Well, Maureen, thank you so much. One of the best things that I received from Maureen was a list of what those acronyms mean. With so many of you being brand new to business continuity and COOP, this has been a little Bible for me, which I think is fantastic. Is this something that we can have on the website?
Absolutely, and it's not just what's in the plan, there's some extra emergency management acronyms that if you're taking tests or reading things that are kind of about it. I just keep adding when I see something that's not already there.
So, excellent. Thank you so much, Maureen. Please join me in thanking